Hello, everybody. This is Josh from Josh's Water Jobs, and this is the Diving into Water and Sanitation Careers podcast. And today we are happy to have with us Daly Wettermark, who works at Xylem. And Daly, could you please introduce yourself?
Sure, absolutely. Thanks for having me. So I've worked for Xylem for the past 2.5 years since getting my undergraduate degree in mechanical engineering. And first, that was part of the company's engineering leadership development program, which is a rotational program. And then I've recently transitioned to a product development owner role for wastewater filtration.
All right, great. So as people know, the question that I start off all these interviews with is there a body of water that you identify with most, and could you tell us why it's important to you?
Definitely. I love that you asked that question because I'd never thought about identifying with a body of water particularly, but hearing the question, immediately thought of Mobile Bay, which is a bay in southern Alabama where I grew up. It's on the Gulf of Mexico, and my relationship with it has definitely evolved throughout my life. Growing up, it was just a fun place to go. We would go swimming or fishing, or I learned to sail on the bay. And I was vaguely aware that there were pollution issues, but never thought too much of it. And then once I got into high school and college and started learning more about environmental questions, I learned about the ecological significance of the bay and the delta that flows into it, which is in the US actually one of the most biodiverse places in terms of fish biodiversity and lizards and even interestingly carnivorous plants, which is like the Venus flytrap family. Yeah, so we have this cool like pitcher plant bog. So and then finally in recent years, I don't live there anymore, but I've since joining the water industry, made the connection that a lot of the pollution issues that I learned about are sewage overflow related. So I unintentionally have found myself now in a sector that's directly working on solutions for this place that is close to my heart. Which is
Perfect.
Really special.
That aligns very well. So do you have a role model, mentor, or someone who's inspired you to pursue a career in water? Could you tell us about that person and how they've influenced you?
Sure, definitely. It's hard to pin down a person because there have been definitely a series of individuals, in part due to the nature of this rotational program, changing roles frequently. But to go back to the start, I definitely drew a lot of inspiration from my engineering thesis mentor in my senior year, Hillary Johnson. And my thesis was on centrifugal pump efficiency, which was also the subject of her research. And that project was my first introduction to the water sector. So working with Hillary was really amazing because, first of all, I really admired her confidence and also related to her reason for pursuing this type of research, which was to address the massive energy demands of pumping systems. But yeah, beyond that, she was just a great listener and patient mentor. I appreciated that in working with her, she would always ask me first, okay, what are your next steps going to be? And give me the chance to think through my own project before giving me the answer, which maybe took more time and effort on her part, but helped teach me to be self-driven and helped me with the project and work. So could definitely go on with other examples, but that was an important one early in my journey.
Yeah, it sounds really good, and especially like the different traits that you mentioned that she brought to that you two were able to discuss and talk about, and how that shaped you. It's really interesting to hear what others may look for in mentors as well. So you mentioned this project. You mentioned Mobile Bay. So is there something else that's inspired you to pursue a career in water?
Yeah, so for me, I think it's kind of a slight difference between what first drew me to water and then what's making me stay. Thinking back, well, first of all, connection to water. If you're familiar with the kids show Avatar: The Last Airbender, I always connected with the waterbenders on that show, so maybe that was always my calling. But no, seriously, I I've always been drawn to, some type of impact around natural resources. So I was looking for a career thinking about, energy or waste or agriculture or water, and was pretty open, but was drawn to water specifically because this engineering rotational program seemed like a perfect fit for matching up climate related work with a real chance to learn and grow, and was further sold by the people I met when interviewing with Xylem. So I was drawn in first with that connection, and also having worked with pumps was thinking, oh yeah, pumps, energy efficiency, that's the climate connection. But then over the past couple of years, what has made me stay and continues to make me stay is understanding how deep that climate connection goes. You have, climate mitigation in the sense of efficiency, but also resource recovery, optimization, and then you have adaptation in the sense of flood protection, reuse, it goes on and on. So another member of the rotational program mentioned that she appreciates learning something new every day in her job. And I think that's absolutely true because the sector is just so broad and evolving. So that excitement about how much is going on with water, as well as just how important and profound the impact is on all of our lives, is what keeps me here.
It's really good to hear, just because there's more of a problem of keeping people, almost marketing the water sector to people to work in, because there's more and more demand for people to work in the water and sanitation sectors. Yeah, we don't have enough professionals going into the profession.
Definitely.
And then there's to retain them as well is another issue. So it's really interesting to hear from your point of view what's kept you in the sector. And maybe it's something we can learn from in terms of keeping others as well, that diversity and excitement and the new things that are popping up all the time.
For sure.
Great. So you've mentioned Xylem in the program that you're in or were in. Can you tell us about your current role there and the steps you took to arrive at that job? How did you find out about it, and what do you think helped you successfully land the job or to get into this young professionals program?
Sure, definitely. So starting with this rotational program that I joined, I first learned about it and learned about Xylem at a career fair at school, where I literally just searched the list of companies that were coming for which ones mentioned the word sustainability and said, okay, that's where I'll submit my resume. And then applying and getting the job for the rotational program, like the engineering leadership development program at Xylem, is a little interesting because you're not applying for a specific role with a specific manager, but one of the benefits of the program to the company as well as the participants is that it allows connections to be made across this otherwise very big and diverse organization. So I think that being excited about that is what made it a good match. And then reaching my current role in wastewater was a process that came from some of the rotations I had with the program. So I joined the industry again working on pumps, which was an immediate connection to my degree in mechanical engineering. And then for my second rotation, I had the opportunity to work with Xylem's sustainability team, which was the group that's tasked with developing our sustainability goals and reporting our sustainability goals each year. So that role was absolutely critical in my learning journey to learn about the trends in the water sector. And one that stuck out to me was water reuse. And I grasped onto this idea of water reuse and how cool and exciting it was, and really wanted to dive into that more for my third rotation. So I found this project that was ongoing at Xylem and was able to join that for my third rotation. And then because it was a really good fit, I ended up continuing that role full time in my current position. So it was a continuation of one of my roles in the rotational program.
Yeah. So how long was the rotational program? And you said you took 3 rotations. And how long were each rotation?
Yes, it's 3 rotations. Each are 8 months. So it's a 2-year program in total. Okay. So 2 or 3 years, I think, is pretty typical for these types of programs at Xylem and in the industry.
Yeah. And then are you guaranteed a position in Xylem after that?
Sure. So the way it works is you end up applying for roles within Xylem after you finish the rotation. And in some cases, it works out that you're able to go back to one of the teams that you've worked for or stay with one of the teams that you've worked for. And because you've already built that relationship with the team and have the experience, it's ends up being a pretty good fit a lot of times. And in some cases, they can actually craft a role around you because they know you and know how you're best able to contribute to the team. But otherwise, you would just look at the other open postings with the company and then be able to talk to the managers and get hired in the normal way.
Okay. So yeah, being a part of this, say, young professionals program, rotational program. So what are the benefits of that, and how, would you recommend this to your peers?
Absolutely would recommend it. Joining this type of a program at this stage in your life. To me, there are a couple of big benefits. The first of all, just being the nature of getting to explore different parts of the water sector in a short amount of time. And I think that first year and a half was really crucial to me finding my way to wastewater, which is now a topic that I really enjoy and I think is a really good match between my interests and my skills, and something that I would never have thought or known to go into earlier on. And kind of embracing that idea that it's okay to know not to know exactly what you're looking for at the beginning. So if you have the flexibility with your time or even physical location to do that, then that's a really big benefit. And then second of all, I alluded to, but just the connections and mentorships that you're able to make along the way, especially starting off in a brand new industry where if you don't really know anybody or anything, to be able to build this network of people who you can go to with questions, go to for advice in a very short amount of time, I think has set me up really well to just be able to know who to go to.
So does Xylem, go recruiting at a lot of universities for this program?
Yeah, they do. Because Xylem recruits at a number of universities each fall, and then other than that, the jobs are posted on their website and hopefully on Josh's Water jobs. If they're not, there should be. We should make that happen. But so they came to our career fair, which is how I met them and learned about it.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. Yeah, no, it's interesting to think about for the future with certain companies that definitely have a large water focus, and how we can help facilitate reaching, the young talent that's out there, like almost directly to the source, so it's just, something to think about for the future. And, Xylem is definitely one of those companies. So.
Absolutely, especially because in undergraduate, I saw a lot of people talking about energy, renewable energy research and jobs was everybody's focus, but I didn't hear too much conversation around water. Of course, there were people that were interested, but it seemed like a smaller subset. So having more of that presence at colleges with young people's communities, I think is really important, so that people even know that this is an option.
So, in what tips would you give to your peers when they're searching for their first job, or starting out in a new position? And for you, it was both.
Exactly. One of the tips that I think is really valuable is one that came from my supervisor last year, which he actually gave in the context of thinking about schools and education. And when looking for classes, you should always first look to the professor, the instructor, and pick the person who's teaching the course over the subject, because the best teachers are going to be the people that you learn the most from. But also extending that to your job, I've found has been really useful, because especially within the water sector, it's already pretty subject specific. So if you're interested in water, then most water jobs, you'll find some type of interest and passion in the topic, but most importantly, you'll absolutely always learn the most if you're surrounded by people who are motivated to teach you and motivated to learn themselves, and surrounded by people who you can really get a lot out of working with. So just picking the people over the subject when it comes down to that, I think is really valuable. And another thing in terms of just starting out in the industry is, if you have the time, volunteering as a means to get connected is useful. There are a number of volunteer opportunities locally or with organizations in the water sector. I recently started volunteering with Moonshot Missions, which is a nonprofit that focuses on providing advice to utilities in underserved communities in the U.S. And that's a kind of research associate volunteer role. So I believe they've even promoted some of those roles on Josh's Water Jobs, actually. So the kind of peer-to-peer relationship approach they take is really special to be involved with, because not only do they have these experienced senior professionals who are on their team who can help the utilities that they serve, but for me, coming in as a junior person in the water sector with a more industrial background, it's an amazing way to get more of an understanding of the utility side and their people and their challenges. So volunteering is another big thing to learn. And actually, one more thing, just in terms of finding jobs that occurred to me, is when interviewing, it's always good to ask the manager or the interviewer about the diversity of the team that you'll be joining, even if it wouldn't change your decision about whether or not to join the team, because of course a number of organizations have diversity, equity, inclusion goals, but I've had a manager who was recruiting tell me themselves that they really appreciated being asked that question, because it showed that and was a reminder that the people who are considering joining the industry, this is important to them. And, you know, the water industry has a long way to go in terms of having that diversity. So hearing it from the interviewees themselves, I think, is pretty powerful.
Yeah, those are three really great points. And the first one, just having a great boss, or like you said, professor, just, it makes work almost not like work. And, if the team is like that, especially if they're passionate, and you enjoy the subject as well. I've always recommended people to volunteer when they're searching for a job, but I think it's actually really, it's nice to hear as well that even though you have a job, you're also volunteering to expand your horizons and contribute in other ways. So I think that's, it's important to hear as well. And the last point that you make is, excellent. I think, things are changing in that regard. And I think that some of these organizations kind of need to hear it from the younger generation, that they would like, more diverse work environments. And that's hopefully where things will be shifting in the future. So it's great to, I really like that piece of advice to ask that during the interview. So I should start asking that myself too. It'll never count against you to ask. And if it does, then, maybe it's not the right type of organization anyway. Exactly that. Yeah. Yeah. So what's you're giving out some pretty good advice. So what's the best piece of advice that you've ever gotten, in terms of, looking for a job or career or whatever? Sure. I feel like I'm going on and on, because I think all of those are things that I have heard at some point, and definitely the advice about choosing the people first ranks up there in terms of the things that I think about most often. But another really simple piece of advice that actually came from a college classmate that I like to think about is just a quote. It's a quote from Dale Carnegie, that a person's name is to him or her the sweetest and most important sound in any language. And first of all, beautiful sentence, but also so true for building relationships in work and in life. And I like to keep that in mind. Yep. Very important to mention people's names. Yes. Perfect. That's really good. So on the flip side, have you ever received any, bad job advice?
I don't know specifically bad advice to me, but I definitely coming through an engineering degree, there was this prevailing idea that if you want a challenging or fast-paced work environment, you need to go work for a startup. And I think that in water, especially, the entire sector is moving pretty fast right now, new infrastructure, whatever it may be. So, and that's really true with any type of organization, utilities, companies, nonprofits. So, I think that, if you're in the water sector, it's just the common thread is that every single person in the sector has this passion and fire behind them. I hear Xylem talk about being in the water sector right now is the opportunity of a lifetime. So, yes, definitely need startups and innovation, but just as importantly, if not more so, is all of these other roles and community leaders to implement changes. So encourage people to find a fit, but don't feel like it needs to be a shiny new startup to be the right impact and challenge.
Yeah, the last time I checked, water challenges are not going anywhere. And we kind of need everybody on board. It's an all of society type of thing. So yeah, all these types of organizations are needed and having good people in all of them.
Definitely.
So what's the biggest challenge that you've faced in your career so far, and how did you overcome that?
Sure. Even in just a couple of years, absolutely have faced a number of challenges. And generally, I would just want to recognize the flip side of being in a rotational program is that it does mean you are moving a lot in this sort of constant state of transition, which can be difficult mentally and emotionally. And of course, recognizing that's an immense privilege to be in the position where something like that is even a challenge. But in making any type of transition, I found that coping with it and overcoming with it is important just to be open about it. And I think during the pandemic, we've all become better at saying, hey, I'm having a rough time, and accepting other people's life and circumstances. Yeah. So that's been important in general. And more water related, and with my current role and the product development roles that I've had, I've realized that things can't always happen instantly. And sometimes it's the inertia of the water sector and the fact that the sector can be slower or more risk averse, but also sometimes it's just unavoidable because of the nature of the technologies we're using. They're big, complicated pieces of machinery or equipment that take time to design or prototype or test. So I've faced that feeling of not knowing how to deal with those long-term goals, never having had to think about something so far in advance. And super practical advice is just learning project management skills. Has been a really useful way of addressing that. Coursera, the website, for example, has some nice resources that you can get with a free trial. And then also just kind of correctly calibrating my mental expectations for how long projects will take and making the right approach.
Super interesting. Thanks. So, you're just a few years into your career. So what are you looking forward to most on, looking down the path that you have ahead of you?
Yeah. So one of the things that I love about being in this space is seeing all of the really experienced engineers and other leaders in the water space who just have this deep intuition about water systems, and their understanding of how everything works is just amazing. And then they're able to give that back to people in ways, from teaching and mentoring younger people to serving communities like at Moonshot Missions, the people who are giving back. So to me, it's exciting to continue to learn now, hoping to eventually reach that point of having that kind of deeper knowledge and intuition to be able to be a trusted advisor and that type of experienced person.
Yeah. Yeah, it does. Having, I'm mentoring a lot where I'm at in my career now. It's really one of the best parts of being at this stage of life and career, is to be able to, hopefully impart a few nuggets of wisdom.
Totally. That's so good to hear. Well, we appreciate it.
Great. So in thinking in talking with a more senior professional, so what advice would you actually give the senior professionals in terms of being better able to help those new to the field succeed?
Yeah, I'd say really going out of your way to make introductions and connections between either like-minded young professionals or connecting young professionals with other more experienced people in the industry. And one idea actually that Deepesh mentioned on your show a couple of weeks ago, I think, was a insightful comment about how some of these open leadership roles in the water sector are being filled by already senior people coming from other industries. So thinking about that, and one specific idea was, even the people who are more senior in the water sector and have more of these connections and are aware of some of these roles that could be opening up, trying to be a matchmaker and make connections between young, passionate people who could fill those roles from the inside and bring a new perspective. And maybe having young people in those roles at the utility could even inspire more young people to come in as operators or other staff, addressing the overall aging workforce. So yeah, job-wise, making connections, or even without it just being a connection to jobs, making connections within your organization. One really great example within Xylem is Xylem Ignite, which is a youth program that has evolved kind of organically over the past couple of years by a group of young professionals who wanted to make more, give more opportunities to passionate students, high school and college students who were interested in the water sector. And it was led by this woman named Delph Mack, but a mentor of mine actually took the time to personally introduce me to her and some of the other people interested in this Xylem Ignite program. And I've seen that the initiative has really been built by those one-on-one recommendations and introductions, and something really special and magical comes out of it because you end up with a great group of people who've now reached thousands of students around the world. So definitely use your experience and connections to make more connections among the younger professionals, because it's just really powerful coming from you, those introductions.
Great. Oh, that's really good to hear. We'll do our best. So, in the podcast, we try to have this a little bit of an intergenerational dialogue where we have the previous senior professional ask a question to the next junior professional, and then you to ask a question to the senior professional. On the last podcast, we had Roberto Lenten, who's the chair of the board of EME. And it's very similar to the last question, actually, that I just asked you, but I'll put a little bit of a twist on it in that. So his question was, how could senior professionals better support young professionals succeed? So one other aspect he did mention of this as well is, so how could institutions themselves, and I think you have an experience of this with Xylem. So how can institutions, organizations, companies kind of support their young professionals that are currently working for them succeed professionally in the medium and the long term?
Totally. Yeah, because it's similar, of course, the prior comments apply, but to answer it personally, I feel like what's needed from our institutions and senior professionals in general. Actually, I'll repeat a really amazing answer to a similar question, which I heard just this morning from a webinar. There was an undergraduate student at Stanford, so shout out to her. Her name is Kathy Luo, who was talking about this in the context of the upcoming COP26 and saying that first to look within yourself. So senior professionals and institutions can also often talk about the power of young people and talk about how we have the potential to change things. And young people do, of course, have big dreams for equity, for sanitation access, for climate resilience, largely because we don't have any other choice. We're going to be facing these water challenges in the next 50 years and onward. So in terms of career goals and potential, us reaching our potential, I can't speak for everyone, but for many of us, we're more concerned with securing our planet's future than reaching a certain level of personal achievement. So I ask senior leaders to recognize that in order to help us achieve those goals of truly transforming the world, you, as the leaders, have to be willing to look inwards, question the status quo as it has been in the sector, and find those ways to crack open the door, to major changes.
Wow, wonderful. I think as we approach COP, we have a big water meeting, 2023 United Nations 2023 water conference.
All right.
Leaders definitely need to hear these things. So that's really really good to hear. Good advice. I like it.
All attention on those conferences right now.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah. So that was a great response to Roberto. Yeah, what's the question that you want to ask to our next senior professional?
Mm-hmm. So I was thinking about it and thinking about how I've heard from a few more experienced water professionals that they have some idea or project that they've always wanted to work on in the water space, but haven't had the time or opportunity. So what would be a passion project in water that you would love to take on or lead given the right team and resources?
That's a great question. I think everybody should answer that for themselves. That's really
maybe
good.
I should answer that for myself, to be honest.
Exactly. Yeah. It's a good exercise. It's a good exercise. Yeah. Well, wonderful. Thank you very much, Daly. Really appreciate it. There was a lot of golden nuggets and of wisdom and great advice from your responses. So we really appreciate it.
Thank you, Josh. Such a privilege to share. And thank you again for the great service that you're doing to the sector and making these connections and helping us all grow.
Okay,
Thank
great.
you so much.
You're very welcome. Okay, thank you.